Hi everyone, welcome to this walkthrough video on getting started with PolyAPI. We're going to begin here on the PolyAPI website by going to polyapi.io. Over on the right, you're going to see a blue Get Started button. We're going to click this to sign up for our PolyAPI account, create a tenant, and get our unique API key that will give us access to the PolyAPI platform. So let's get started. We're going to begin by selecting a Poly instance. Instances are physical deployments of Poly managed by Poly's DevOps team. We have two managed instances to choose from, NA1 North America and EU1 Europe. You're going to select an instance based off your business needs. For this demo, we're going to do NA1 North America. And now we can click Select Instance. Next, we'll fill out this form to sign up for a new account and create a tenant on our selected instance. We're going to input our email, provide a name for our tenant, and select the service tier. To try Poly without any commitments, select Free Trial, and then check the box to agree to PolyAPI's terms of service, and click Sign Up. Now we'll need to input the verification code that was sent to our email to activate our account. So let's grab our verification code from our email, and click Verify Code. Great, now our signup is complete and we have our API key. This API key is unique to our tenant and ensures secure access with granular permissions. Just an important note, your API key will only be shown once, so store it securely. If you lose it, contact PolyAPI support team at support@polyapi.io. Now with our API key, we can log into the PolyUI to manage resources, build custom CRUD applications, and auto-generate user interfaces. Additionally, we have a list of useful links that will help us along the way. So let's go ahead and copy our API key so we can log into the PolyUI, and click Go to Login. Input our API key here and click Login. After logging in, the main content area may display a message like No API functions found, indicating that no functions have been created yet through training of your APIs. We'll cover this in a future demo. For now, let's go ahead and explore the sidebar menu where we can view and manage APIs, webhooks, triggers, and more. If you click, for example, Public API Functions, you will get a list of all of our pre-trained out-of-the-box API functions that are ready for your integration needs. We can click into, for example, this function to get a list of all of our publicly available API functions, to see further details like the name, the context, a description, the arguments, type schema, the source, return type, and more. We also have our admin section and our support section. Under support, there's a list of helpful links that you can reference if you need help getting started with the PolyAPI platform. For this next part of the demo, we're going to set up our development tools. To start developing with PolyAPI, you'll need to install Visual Studio Code, and for this demo project, you'll also need to install Node.js if you're developing in TypeScript. So let's go ahead and click the links to install Visual Studio Code and Node.js. And click Download. Now let's go back and install Node.js. And for me, I'm going to click macOS Installer. Now that we have Visual Studio Code and Node.js installed, let's go ahead and open Visual Studio Code, install the PolyAPI extension, and get our first API function example working. Now that we have Visual Studio Code open, let's install the Poly extension. We'll navigate over to the left and click the extension icon. Search for PolyAPI and click Install. Now, just a note, this will only need to be done once. Once installed, you'll see a palm tree icon appear on the left. We'll click this to set up our Poly client. Before configuring our Poly client SDK, we'll need to open a project by going up to the folders icon and open folder. And once our project is open, we'll go back to the palm tree icon and click Set up Poly client. We'll follow the prompts, like selecting our project type, TypeScript, inputting our API region, which this will be our instance that we selected upon signup, NA1, inputting our API key, which is installing our Poly client. Now we're going to click Yes to install dependencies. You can see it's generating our Poly TypeScript SDK. Once generated, let's go back to our palm tree icon over on the left. This gives us access to internal and vendor API functions, webhooks, and more. If you click into the context, for example, out of the box, you'll find a list of all of our pre-trained out-of-the-box functions that come available for your integration needs upon signup. Here, if we click into, for example, PolyAPI, API functions, you can see more information about a specific function. For example, to get a list of publicly available API functions, if you hover over the function, it will give you a nice description. You can also click this function and it'll copy to your clipboard where you can easily paste it into your code. Next, let's go ahead and navigate over to the right and open our AI assistant. We can click this display view and you'll see this parrot icon, which is our PolyAI assistant. Just a note, upon signup, the Poly parrot might appear over on the left. You can just drag and drop it over to this display view. We can use the PolyAI assistant to ask questions like, how do I get a list of functions from PolyAPI? The AI assistant will query your trained functions and explain how to use them with a nice code example. Also, if you want to ask the PolyAI assistant about something else, you can use one of the special chat commands, /h. This will give you a list of all of the Poly Conversation special commands. Now let's go ahead and get our first API function working. You can see that the PolyAI assistant has generated a nice code example for getting a list of all of the publicly available API functions. Let's copy this code to our clipboard, open a new file, and paste the code into our script. Additionally, we can click into the function, go to the definition, and see the function ID, the parameters, the return type, and type schema. So let's go back to our code and put our values for our parameters, the instance URL, and the PolyAPI key. Now let's open the terminal to run this code. Great. Now you can see that we have our first code example working, and we got a list of public functions for PolyAPI. Lastly, let's go to our PolyUI where we can again see this public function. Back in the PolyUI, under Public API Functions, you can see the function that we used to get a list of public visibility API functions for PolyAPI, where we can again view the details of this public function. And that's it for this demo. Thank you for watching. I hope that was helpful. As a reminder, there are helpful links under the support section. For example, you can click the Poly Quick Start documentation for more information and help to get started. Happy developing!